mental health. We are talking about topics like suicide, and that can be triggering to some people. So, look, as always, we want to do this safely. So, if you are feeling at unease, then look, I'd suggest you don't carry on, but maybe look for some help. So there are some calls there. The one call or the text that's really easy to remember the whole time is, of course, 1737. It's simple for a reason. So we will have these slides available for anybody at the end of the webinar, probably up on our website tomorrow, as well as a recording of this as well. So those safeguards we always put in here. We also will have a Q&A available as well towards the end of the webinar. So we're happy to take a few questions if there are any. And if you see at the bottom of your Zoom page, there's actually a Q&A function. So you can actually register your questions at any time. And then we can have a look at them, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them online. If they're a little bit difficult or a little bit challenging in terms of just making sure we get the right answer, we might take it offline and then provide a written answer and put it up on our website. And if we don't get to them all as well, it's just a matter of not having enough time, and we'll try and answer them too. So I'd really encourage those questions to come in. So look, we know that if you go to the next slide, Lauren, look, I'd just like to introduce our team for today. Look, I'll start with Dr. Lauren. So Dr. Lauren Donnan, she earned a PhD from University of Auckland, specialising in Aotearoa's young carers, children and youth for family members with disabilities or illnesses. Previously, Senior Policy and Advocacy Advisor at the World Vision New Zealand. Now works as Research, Innovation and Evaluation Manager at Mates in Construction New Zealand. Strong commitment to social issues and community wellbeing, Lauren excels in research that partners with communities and stakeholders to develop impactful evidence-based solutions. And look, we see our construction industry as just a series of interrelated communities at the end of the day. Dr. Chris Bowden, so myself and Chris also sit on the same board. Dr. Chris Bowden is PhD in health, expert in suicide prevention and postvention, academic director of Mates in Construction New Zealand. Chris lectures at the School of Education at Victoria University in Wellington on issues and contexts that affect development and wellbeing, child and adolescent mental health, and counselling and evidence-based mental health interventions. His research focuses on motives for suicide, men's experiences of suicide bereavement. Chris provides community and professional education on suicide and advocates for trauma-informed approaches. And last but definitely not least, James is one of our frontline. So James Edward Rapley Sendall, as he introduces himself to workers on sites, joined Mates from within the construction industry in July 2021. He's a proud Palmerston Northian. James is now one of Mates' more experienced field officers, supporting workers in the hustle and bustle of Auckland Central. Like many field officers, it's the people that continue to inspire James. And quote from James here is, the role allows the opportunity to meet some of the kindest, most genuine, heartwarming humans. At the end of the day, is why we do the job. So look, without further ado, I'll hand over to the team. And Lauren, Chris and James will walk you through the next sort of 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end of it. Over to you guys.
I guess I'll kick us off. Thank you all for your time here today. I'm going to give us a brief overview of where our research here at Mates fits into our overall program model. And I've had many terms used to describe our wheel or our pillars. I like to look at it as like a water wheel. I think we're all familiar with what water is. It comes out of tap, water from the owl, from our rivers, or from the sky in the form of rain. A river flows with momentum, and so does this wheel. First step in the wheel is raising awareness. As a field officer, I'm based within Central Auckland primarily. That's a big part of my role, raising awareness both physically on site, delivering our key service offering, the general awareness training, through our connector training, through even on-site presence throughout major projects. Now, our second step to raising awareness, it's very good and well for me to be on site, to be destigmatizing a subject that's been long held and seen as potentially shameful or hidden away, but also to build strength and encourage those who do often have these soft skills and abilities, but are potentially hidden and can be recognized. And it's key, especially to our Connector program, by building this strength and courage both within the industry community that you see within the middle and the hub of this wheel. We can start to build a peer support capacity within every site, project, and workplace that we are uh, assigned to. But from here, with that strength and courage that we have built through the awareness that we have generated, those services, supports, and really positive outcomes that we are striving to have within our workplaces can have a direct and quite fluid conduit. This connection to help is built. I like to describe this as a bit like a pathway. We do work within a construction industry, so like roads are built to provide easier access towards our, say maybe our arterial routes with here in Auckland, but even our places that we work, live, and breathe. And so do these connections to our help need to be established towards, from those who do need help to the help that they need. That connection is established and it becomes fluid. But finally, and where I feel like the water really stems from, that powers the water wheel and flows and makes it not just a process that is linear, but that's why I use that circular metaphor of a water wheel is really I guess the foundation or our fuel here at Mates, which is research. As I describe our program, whenever I started general awareness training, we're research focused and evidence-based. It's really, I guess, metaphorically, as a field officer, that's our tūranga wawa. It's where we stand. It's what gives us the grounding to be able to raise our awareness, to be able to know where the needs are within our industry and how we can meet them, how we can continually adapt, improve, and evolve as a program, as deliverers, and as an organization to fit the changing landscape of an industry and a country that needs it.
Beautiful. Kia ora, team. I'm going to now speak to the research that we've done recently and that we'll be sharing today. Just a note, we have put out 3 massive pieces of research, and to condense them into a 45-minute presentation is quite difficult. So really encourage people, if there's a part that really interests you, to go away, have a look at that research on our website, or come to us with questions, etc. So the first piece of research we're speaking to is around understanding need. And this is a costing study to understand what is suicide costing the construction industry annually and what's the impact of Mates in reducing that cost. And we commissioned this report externally to Central Queensland University and a health economist there. I'm not going to claim I could have done this. I am no health economist. But this is a very, very important piece of research that helps us to understand what is that cost and raise awareness of the importance of having suicide prevention initiatives such as Mates and other incredible organisations out there. The second piece is around making progress, and this is our annual industry wellbeing survey that Mates has done since 2021. So this was our 3rd year, completed in November 2023. And this allows us each year to understand how our workers are travelling in terms of their mental health and well-being and the key stresses of concern to them, because we know they will shift over time depending on external factors. And like James said, this is a key part of having that evidence base so that we can shape what we're doing at Mates and so that we can make sure that what we're sharing with industry is up to date. It's also beneficial because the more we're able to collect that data regularly, it's helping us to see trends over time and we can make those changes as we go. The third piece of research is about capturing voices. And this, while that second piece of research was supported by ASB, this piece of research was supported by brands. And this research, we did focus groups with different groups of workers so that we could dig deeper into those psychosocial stresses and understand what they look like for different groups of workers. For example, migrant workers, apprentices, health and safety managers. And that's really important to get that rich context because we know it's not the same for everyone. So even though we may understand that this is the key stressor, we wanted to see what that looked like for different groups so that we can target what we do. And so different workplaces can do the same to make sure we're meeting different groups of workers. Moving on. I think we're handing over to Dr. Chris Bowden now to talk us through that first piece of research.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. This, as Lauren said, this piece of research we worked in conjunction with Professor Chris Bowden from Queensland University to figure out, the economic and other costs and related to suicide in the construction sector in New Zealand. Chris had done this work for some different states and for Australia, and had a really robust process and model for working this out. So he was a great person to kind of work with and go with on this project. And as Lauren said, this project was really important for helping us raise awareness of why this needs to be a priority for investment, and really raising awareness about how big an issue this is for the construction sector and how much of a priority this needs to be. And Chris's analysis showed that, for me, it was really about the cost of not addressing this issue. It was really difficult to, put a figure and a value on somebody's life or somebody's death. But this piece of work has really shown us that we cannot afford to do nothing, that we cannot afford to ignore this issue. In the construction sector, 2022-2023, there were 565 suicides suspected nationwide. 80 suicides were in construction, and that was, 14% of all of those suicides were in the construction sector. But not just that, the analysis showed that, 1,628 workers needed time off for self-harm as well. And so we've got a much bigger problem than just the deaths by suicide. We've got self-harm and self-injurious behaviour happening on work sites as well, and off work sites. And Chris's analysis showed us that, this is costing the country $1.135 billion a year. That was just for 2023. More importantly, I think, was figuring out what the value of the MATES program was, in terms of reducing that cost or saving lives. And Chris's analysis showed us that, for every life that's saved through the MATES program, we're saving $14.2 million annually, which is, a significant cost. And so roughly the return for investment on the MATES program is, $4.50 for every dollar invested, which makes MATES a really good program to invest in. Demand for the program has been increasing. We know that we've got significant increases in case management, large numbers of construction workers calling the support lines, and we've been dealing with a significant number of post-vention cases as well. What does this tell us? It tells us that if we were able to upscale MATES, increase its reach, with more investment, we'd be able to do more, and we'd probably be able to save more lives and reduce harm across the sector. And so what we're looking for now is, an increase in investment in the program, and working in partnership with other groups to, increase the reach of the program and the impact of the program. But sadly, and this is a key part to it that we need to remind people, working out the economic cost of suicide doesn't in any way account for the social, emotional, and larger loss that the community feels, and families and individuals feel as the result of deaths and injuries. And so the numbers really don't capture what's going on. Hence, the second piece and third piece of research, which Lauren's going to talk to now, we really needed to dig a bit deeper and understand what's going on in the sector, to highlight what it is that people are actually dealing with.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. And I also think what's so compelling about that return on investment is it's based on MATES saving just one life per year. So if you look at the demand Chris spoke to, it's fairly evident that it's likely we have a greater impact. So that is a very conservative return on investment, which is important, but I think that's, key to note. So looking at our industry wellbeing survey, this is the point of collecting our data annually to understand how our workers are travelling and to make sure that what we're doing at Mates is meeting industry need right now. So it helps us to understand those groups that might need extra support, but it also allows us to see what's working well so that we can do more of that, because it's important to balance those things we can help mitigate the stresses, but also to celebrate and do more of what workers are liking. The study survey was originally developed by Allen and Clark, and with a lot of input from Mate staff and boots on the ground to make sure it was really relevant to the industry. And of course, we went through ethical approval. A key part of research is making sure it's accessible, and it's something that I absolutely love in the roles that I've done over time, is really digging into how we can make it as accessible as possible to the community to make sure that every person feels they have the opportunity to participate. So we changed it up a bit and we translated it into 6 languages, including Te Reo and those most commonly spoken in the construction industry, including Tagalog, Samoan, etc. And we noticed that that was a massive accessibility piece, so that workers who weren't strong in English language could also participate. We also made sure that we had the survey available via scanning QR codes so that workers could complete it on their phone, on an iPad, or something with assistive technology if you needed text to speech and things like that, as well as taking hard copies out to sites to recognise, look, a lot of our workers aren't at a computer to fill out a survey every day. Let's harness these incredible field officers that Mates have going out to sites every day, took the hard copies, workers, did it against a wall, wherever they could, and that really helped us to get a great sample. So we had over 2,000 workers participate, diversity in those workers, which is really important as well, because then we can dig into those different groups and understand what this looks like for different groups. Like I said earlier, we've run it annually, so this was our 3rd one, with our 4th about to be rolled out now. And for us, it provides a benchmark for the sector year on year. How are we travelling overall in our general mental health and wellbeing in those key psychosocial stresses, and what groups might we need to keep a particular eye on? When we look at the general mental health question, we can see that worker wellbeing is more positive in 2023 than it was in the 2 prior years. So it's increased 10% from 2022 and 15% from 2021. And of course, there's a lot of external factors that we could imagine would play a role in that. For example, locking down the entire country because of a virus. So there's many factors at play, but really positive in terms of the way we are tracking in our workplace mental health and wellbeing overall. When we did our research event a little while ago, Dame Nader came and spoke to us, and she covered the importance of talking about oranga hinengaro rather than mental health. And I will use mental health just because it rolls off my tongue, but I'm trying to do better, because oranga hinengaro signals a more important emphasis on the holistic nature of well-being. It's not a medicalized single concept, but greater than that in the environments we're in, and how that affects it as well. The concept of well-being and ill-being is really important in understanding the findings from the survey, in terms of where we look at a question like, what is your general mental health like? And it's a positive outcome. We can't assume that across every level, workers are experiencing that well-being. There will be certain situations where you experience ill-being, and where well-being is feeling good and happy and positive, and ill-being is your stress or anxiety. It's understanding that they can coexist. And it gives us a better understanding of oranga hinengaro, or mental health, if we can look at those 2 states. So when you have a broad question like this, it's really great to see that general mental health and how it's tracking, but it's important that we dig deeper and we don't just rely on that single question to tell us how our workers are tracking. So in terms of workers needing extra support, the way we understood which groups it was that were requiring more support was questions that asked about mental health and those reporting poor or okay mental health. Those more likely to report that the last 12 months had been among the most difficult times of their life, more likely to report that they weren't able to manage stress most of the time, those who are more likely to have a higher psychological distress score, and those who reported more suicide ideation, thoughts, plans, and attempts. And those groups for us in the survey were our rangatahi aged 15 to 24 years, our non-binary and female workers. Interestingly, this was the first year we've included a question where we asked workers if they had a disability, illness, mental illness, or physical impairment. And that was really insightful because we found that almost 1 in 5 workers reported having a disability, illness, mental illness, physical impairment. So that's a huge thing that we need to consider. And then when we look at those different factors, this is a group that's requiring extra support that's consistently coming up as not traveling as well as other groups of workers. Another group is workers with low support, and that could be in terms of family, whānau, peer support, partner support, or those not in a relationship, especially divorced or separated, where that relationship's fractured. And in terms of groups of workers, our apprentices and blue-collar workers, those in the Te Manawataki region as well. So those were the key groups for us that were consistently coming out as being more likely to report lower mental health, etc. When we look at the key stresses that were being reported, this is our psychosocial factors. So you have your positive factors, such as great support at work, good relationships, which promote well-being. And then when those are negative, things like aggression in the workplace, poor communication, too much work, they are what we call psychosocial stresses, so those negative factors. And we know that it's really important to look at the psychosocial stresses because that impacts on worker mental health and well-being. And those stresses exist both at work and at home, and they're very closely connected. And that's why it's important to understand both those contexts. In terms of that work and home connection, it is really interesting because stresses at home don't stay at home. They come to work and they affect the workplace, and stresses at work can affect home life. For example, if you have a massive workload, you're doing overtime every day, you're coming home and your partner's really grumpy that you haven't been there to help with the kids, but you just need time out. That is that interplay between work and home stresses. So when we look at the workplace stresses, 3 in 4 workers reported at least one work-related issue of concern, with most reporting more than one. Almost 40% of workers reported 3+ workplace stresses that were of concern to them. So the key workplace stressor was high and or low job demands for 42% of workers, followed by a high workload, poor support in the workplace, poor workplace relationships, being with managers or colleagues, and poor environmental conditions. And when we look at extreme weather events, etc., I'm sure that came into play. Other stresses that came across were that ongoing physically, mentally, emotionally demanding work, stress among workmates, and low recognition and reward for work being done. It's important to note that these stresses are not experienced at the same level for every group. And because we'd collected that demographic information, we were able to dig deeper and understand this. And those same workers on the previous page that were more likely to experience poor mental health, etc., were also those that we see experiencing many of these psychosocial stresses to a greater level than others. And an example is workers with a mental illness. So when we look at a key stressor for them being poor support at work, 58% of workers with a mental illness said that they experienced poor support at work and that was a key concern for them, compared to 29% overall. Same again for low reward and recognition. Overall, 17% of workers said that low reward and recognition was a key concern for them. You then look at workers with a mental illness and that was 41%. So you're seeing these differences between groups of workers, and we're, really helps us to understand where to put that focus. In terms of home life stresses, 71% of workers reported at least one, and a quarter 3 to 5 issues. The top was lack of sleep or feelings of exhaustion for 38% of workers, physical health issues, limited time for self-care, relationship being your family, whānau, friends, and mental health issues. And that same thing again, where you have the disparity between different groups' experiences of those stresses. The key lessons from this piece of research. So we saw that for our older workers, those who had been in the construction industry for a longer period of time, our Pacifica and Asian workers and our subcontractors consistently came across that they reported better mental health and well-being, their psychological distress levels were lower, etc. So key lessons for us when we looked at what was not going well and what was going well. First of all is to increase support at home and work, and it's that work-life balance is so important. Then it's tailoring resources for diverse groups. And this is looking at, and Chris Bowden introduced me to this, which perhaps other people know, but I found fascinating, the difference between attunement, where you change what you do at a surface level, we change the imagery in our messaging to make sure people feel seen and included, versus the notion of adaptation, where you make sure that the content that you're speaking to and your key messages actually align with the values of a particular group. So they're going to really receive that information in a way that works for them. And as a researcher, that could look like meeting with a group of rangatahi and understanding for them how best they like to receive this information and what would work best for them. The next one was recognizing the impact of disability, illness, physical impairment, and mental health on well-being. When we look at disabling environments, how our environment may stigmatize or make work more difficult for this group of workers. And I think just really highlighting that we have a large group of workers who are struggling with invisible issues. How can we make the workplace as safe and accommodating and enabling for these workers as possible? Overall, it's about balancing, decreasing those stresses with increasing the protective factors. And this is in our conversations, in our actions, always being kind on ourselves to understand that we will be doing a lot really well right now. And we need to be able to see that, celebrate that, and do more of that. And balancing that with really taking the time to understand what those key stresses are and helping to mitigate those for our workers. And that's how we spark and continue to spark positive change. I'm handing over to Chris now to talk about our final piece of research.
This last project that we did was really a follow-up to the survey and an opportunity, supported by brands to drill into what those psychosocial stresses are, and more importantly, what are workers' experiences of them? Like, how do they perceive them as impacting their mental health, and why are those stresses important? It was also a really great opportunity to canvass a diverse group within the construction sector and get their views and experiences, so that, as Lauren said before, maybe we can tailor resources and solutions to those diverse groups. So it was really a great opportunity to hear from them in their own words, what were the biggest issues for them, and also what were some possible solutions. Often we overthink things and overcomplicate things, and it was really interesting being part of this work and listening to the stories and capturing the voices of these people who every day go out and do this work and experience these stresses. Gabrielle Jenkins, who's associate professor at Otago University, assisted with this project, and it was a really great combined effort, but with the MATES team as well, to do this piece of work. And we worked really hard to try to, again, as Lauren said, to capture that diversity and make this as accessible to people as possible. We got ethical approval. We tried to make sure that we could recruit people and reduce barriers to participation. The field officers and others at MATES picked up workers, brought them to the MATES headquarters. We interviewed them in these focus groups. They got to share experiences within that group and get, I guess, a lot of validation and acknowledgement that they weren't the only ones experiencing these stresses and that there were others out there that were like them. And, you know, we tried to make this research doable for them in terms of the flexibility, in terms of when and where we did the interviews. We did some of them online, we did some of them in person, we fed them, we tried to take care of transport needs, and really just to make this a really great opportunity for people to share those voices in a range of different ways. If we go to the next slide. So what we found from this study was that they identified a number of stresses that were really important to them. And there were some stresses that were common across all of the groups. It didn't matter whether they were health and safety, boots on the ground, labourers, middle management. There were some stresses that were kind of common across all those different occupations. And then there were other stresses that seemed to impact certain groups more than others. So again, it was a great opportunity to figure out, you know, which of these were most important. One of the big ones that came up was the boom and bust cycle, the uneven workloads, the insecurity, the financial pressure that comes from that, not knowing if there's going to be enough work in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. Low pay was another one that really affected our boots on the ground workers in particular, working long hours, often some of those workers working multiple jobs just to try and make ends meet, pay the bills, support their families here and back overseas. Our migrant workers really struggled with this as well. Poor communication and relationships. I think that was one that spanned right across all of the groups. They talked about this as being a major issue. Language barriers, lack of awareness of different cultures and their values and beliefs and how they do things, and a lack of respectful communication on site. And then probably no surprise, but the old school masculinity is still out there, still having an impact on people's mental health. That kind of harden up culture of, you know, you got to suffer in silence and work comes first. And if this is not for you, then get out. There was a lot of examples provided of disrespectful communication, abuse, physical harassment, sexism, sexual harassment, particularly for our female workers, and also a real lack of recognition of the hard work that people put in and the value behind that. And finally, a real lack of understanding of mental health and oranga hinanato, as Lauren said, that kind of more holistic concept of mental, physical, spiritual, and cultural well-being being connected. A lot of stigma still on site around mental health that stops people from asking for support, reaching out, people not wanting to talk about it on site. Although we did hear from the groups that had slowly started to change. We were making some progress in that, and I think MATES was doing a good job of maybe assisting with that. The other thing that they brought up was the lack of support other than EAP. So, you know, in terms of emotional and social support outside of the workplace. I think more importantly, you know, the groups told us what might make a difference from their point of view. Often we go about trying to solve these problems from a top-down perspective. and researchers are no different at this. Often we think we have the best view, but it was really important to get these workers to tell us, in their view, what might make a difference to their mental health and well-being. And they gave some really practical and useful advice. They made some really good recommendations, particularly around solving the boom and bust cycle, government planning, trying to create a pipeline of work that might create a bit more security, helping people learn how to budget and deal with the lack of finances and the ups and downs of that income as the work progresses, trying to create a minimal wage and minimal standards for pay so that people at least had some security around that, guaranteed minimal hours. Poor communication, they had some great solutions for this. Training leaders and managers in actual effective communication, building stronger social support across workers so that they can reach out and feel connected and feel supported by other people, better pastoral care. In terms of the old school masculinity stuff, the workers said to us, look, there's things we could do to address workplace bullying. We could really kind of shift the culture in terms of prioritizing individual well-being, but also family time and family values on site, run the company like a family whānau. And then in terms of the mental health awareness and understanding, they said, look, this has got to be a priority. Like, companies and the sector have really got to put this at the top. That we're talking about people here, not just products and outcomes and jobs complete. So, we really need to prioritize our workers. We need to integrate mental health, not just have a Pizza Friday, but, think about how this is going to kind of apply across a range of parts of the work. Better toolbox talks and guest speakers, things that inspire and encourage people to do things differently. And, again, as Lauren said, to really kind of think about attuning and adapting current resources so that they reach those diverse groups of workers. And I want to kind of ask James now, what's your take on the key stressors, but also the solutions, I guess? I mean, are these what we heard from the focus groups? Is that what you're also seeing on site?
Almost verbatim, Chris. Like, at every stress you could see as Lauren was reading them out, I was nodding my head. I've heard almost those exact words come out of people's mouth around those stresses. And I think that's incredibly important point to acknowledge, but also, as you've just said now, Chris, around these solutions that we've been given, the informed by our workers, it's something for us to take heed to. So if I'm to focus on any within this slide right here, I guess I've got to do so in, an MBA style draft format, my top 3 picks that I would be choosing from our worker informed actions and solutions. Number 1, I'm going to have to focus on our 3rd point here. You'll see on your left-hand side, poor communications and relationships. This can have quite an actionable response that even as an individual, wherever you sit within an organization, can make an action right even today to aid in this. To quote one of my key contacts from multiple sites over my 3 years, who would always use a phrase, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. Within every level, within our everyday interactions, we can make a difference, and that is through our communication. Even simple things through the learning of the names of the people that we work with. Here at Mates and Alphas, we'll walk around everyone in Alphas, fist bump them, talk to them, greet them in the morning. Those little things have huge differences in breaking down the communication barriers that have been established over time, which can build stronger social support networks, as we see. So my second pick, to address old school masculinity, as Chris said, it's a long held belief, and I've seen this been broken down a little bit over my time, mate. So around bullying and that tough love that is experienced quite notably within an apprentice era, or even if you're a cadet or entering the industry for the first time. And this can be addressed by first and foremost acknowledging that this does exist, but also by providing solutions to those who are entering into our places of work, developing a buddy system, having someone walk alongside this person as they are being onboarded, and getting them to learn the tools and tips of the trade. Not just if they are on the tools, but also often as well. Stress is not just from the neck downwards, it's also from the neck up. But finally, for my third pick in my all-star solutions lineup would be for our lack of mental health understanding. think Chris said it quite well. Just speaking into existence the acknowledged or lack of understanding can often be the first step for us within, whether it be toolbox talks, casual conversations. Varying our approach and being creative is incredibly important around addressing a lack of understanding. There are many different learning styles and there are many different challenges that we face. So we need to have different charges to address those challenges, just like we have different charges for our phone, our laptop, and even an electric vehicle if you drive one. They all have different plugs, so we need to have different approaches, don't we? So get creative. We all have that power to do so.
Beautiful. I'm really getting good at sports analogies here, mate. So looking forward, these three pieces of research have told us a story of how our workers are travelling, what are those groups experiencing key stresses, and what are some possible solutions. And I think whenever you do research, it's about making sure that you're sparking change right from that individual worker all the way up to that government policy legislation space. And that at Mates is where we're at now with the dissemination piece. I'm very mindful of time and that we want to leave time for Q&A and that we're at 12:43. I officially have 2 minutes. Saying now you're popped on. So looking across all three, our key recs are expanding Mates and also similar programs to Mates. We realise we're not the only one. There are brilliant initiatives out there and making sure they're well funded and able to expand to meet demand is key. Improving suicide prevention and postvention by growing a workforce. That's what Mates is doing by having our volunteers, over 5,000, is it?
Yeah.
Out there able to recognise and support people not travelling well and link them into that support that we have. It's improving the effectiveness of our support. So this research means that all our field officers understand the key stresses, how our industry is travelling, how different groups might be experiencing things, so that in their conversations and trainings, we're speaking to what workers need now, and we know possibly who to look out for a bit more. It's reducing the stresses and increasing the protective factors, which I talked about earlier. So celebrating what we're doing well and doing more of that alongside recognising and mitigating the stresses. Chris Alderson and I had a chat yesterday and he spoke to me about human-centred design and how it's really important to design work around the person and make sure we're always thinking of the people, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. And I thought that was really important to highlight, as well as his kōrero on the fact that building is a purpose organisation. We make something, we build something, and in times of high stress, time crunch, we can lose sight of the importance of people and of team, and the purpose dominates. So just keeping in mind that we shouldn't let that purpose overshadow the people. Strengthening prevention and early intervention. So making sure we have that focus, with your metaphor, well away from the cliff's edge, where we're raising that awareness. What does poor mental health look like? How do I know if myself or someone else isn't travelling well, and what to do? Of course, to continue funding research so that we can keep doing this and we can shape any regulation and policy with our own workers' voices. It's particularly important that construction has a voice there, because we are one of the industries with a high rate of suicide, and it's really important that our workers' voices are feeding into any suicide prevention action plan reform, which is coming up, into the refresh of the Health and Safety Act, which is exactly what we are working on now in terms of our submissions. We're going to finish off with James, just giving us a little stronger together.
Yeah. I just want to say a massive thank you for all of you, even in attendance here today, listening to us. A massive thank you for ASB, Brands, and CHASNZ, for everyone who's been a part of our research so far. When I was back in university a couple of years ago now, back in 2013, I was taught about the media effects model and the idea of a spiral of silence. Have to turn that upside down. It's like a traffic cone, isn't it? If you hold a traffic cone up to your mouth, it's a bit like a megaphone. And that's what research does for the voices of those who are unheard. It amplifies all those voices of every single person who has gone through stress, who has gone through tough times. And for us at Mates, that sparks hope, not only that we are making a change, but that we are doing the right work and we're moving in a great direction. If you look at this little diagram you have on your right-hand side, look at all those people who are making a difference. Those are the kind of the fireflies that are lighting up our pathway moving forward. And it's started a real fire for change. It's ignited hope. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you, each and every single one of you. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you so much, Chris, for introing us. I think that's pretty much us.
Over to Chris.
Hey, thanks, James. And look, mate, thanks for at least getting one road cone reference in there. Very timely, topical.
I didn't. That wasn't even intentional. That was like,
Hey, look, congratulations, guys. I mean, I'm sort of thinking back 5 years ago when we were thinking about, mates starting. There wasn't one piece of New Zealand-based research we could find that actually helped us give any kind of insight into what was happening. There was a lot of opinion, a lot of anecdote out there, and some of that opinion and anecdote still holds true, no doubt. But it's always good to have an evidence base behind us. And look, now we've got what we feel is we're really lucky that we've got organisations like yourselves actually going and taking the time and doing the research, because it's really important that whatever we do is in terms of intervention, prevention, treatment, it's got a logic behind it, and that it's sound. And that's been the topic of some of our previous webinars on this topic as well. Really keen to see that. So congratulations again. A couple of questions though. I'll start with one myself, and I think it's I'm a little bit loath to ask it because I know it's not a competition, and nothing to be proud of, but it kind of speaks to how we see the construction industry. And I guess to start off with, in terms of your definition of the construction industry itself, I wonder if you can just talk briefly about who you consider in when we talk about it, and how that relates to construction suicide rates and where we compare in New Zealand compared to other industries. If you can just, I'm not sure if this is a Chris or it's a Lauren question here, but either one.
almost jump in both.
James to define the industry.
Yeah, which is a hard thing to do. I think you'll be able to speak to a comparatively statement, but like for me, my background before mates was in trade sales. I worked for a trade sales company. I consider that part of the industry. Every part of, let's say a build or a project, every supplier from engineers, architects, everyone who is a part of building a project at any stage, I feel is a part of the industry, not just necessarily someone who is utilizing a tool to build something, but those who design and create the plans in which that project is made from, the developers and clients who are part of procurement. It's a very wide umbrella, which does need to be defined and captured, I feel, because there are stresses all the way up that chain from contractors who are working for those who need that work to be done.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned some of those groups like not being paid very well. I imagine you're talking about labourers and people on sort of part-time contracts even.
Absolutely, which are directly affected by macroeconomic factors that we're seeing right now within our market. That boom bust cycle that we discussed around pipelines of work. Those exact people that you mentioned, Chris, who are reliant on, say, project-based work, or even say within the residential sector, work coming through the pipeline that may potentially not be there in the future.
And when we do look at our rates of suicide in the construction industry, how we classify the construction industry is really important. And the latest peer-reviewed research on that is available on the MATES website, and shows that the rates of suicide in the construction industry are one of the highest among all industries. And it's the same internationally. We see it time and again, and we experience that here in Aotearoa as well. And it's really encouraging to see that the Suicide Prevention Action Plan is utilising that peer-reviewed article to inform the actions that are being taken. So, really stoked to see that.
Right. Also, second question now from the field. This is probably a little bit of a technical question. How is it determined a death occurred via suicide? So when you're doing the research, this is probably a Chris Bowden question, I'd imagine. And then maybe more broadly, is there a breakdown of numbers by region, which I imagine you have got, but maybe Chris, if you can just talk to that. I know it's a sensitive topic, but do what you can.
The way that a death is determined is through a coronial process, which can take anywhere between 2 and 4 years. There's a full investigation that's conducted. Some suicides are fairly easy to determine, particularly if the person has a long history of mental health issues and previous suicidal behaviour. Other cases can be more difficult and quite traumatic for families to go through that process and those that have been impacted. But it's the coroner that determines what the cause of death was, and it's a pretty tricky process. Sometimes it's easier to determine that this was intentional. Sometimes suicides, we probably underestimate the number of suicides actually, because a lot of those suicides look like accidents, or things that might be unintentional. In regards to the breakdown of numbers by region, the Ministry of Health has a suicide web tool on its webpage that gives you a chance to kind of screen total numbers of suicides and also suspected suicides, the ones that haven't been ruled out by the coroner yet or verified. Unfortunately, with the changes, they used to report suicides by DHB region, by health region, and so you could drill down and find out how many were in the Wairarapa versus how many were in Wellington or Auckland or different regions. But that's become increasingly difficult with the abolishment of the DHBs, and the suicide web tool's not great for drilling down to that level, though you can request that information from the Ministry of Health if you're after it.
Right. James, I've just got a question here more generally. I think there's lots of people out there who want to help mates, and the person here has obviously lived experience, as many of us have, mental illness over 25 years in the industry as a consultant. How can people get involved and help to make a difference?
Yeah, I would say to reach out to us. You can either go on our website, mates.net.nz, give us a call on our 0800 number, 0800 111 315. You can email into our info email here at office. I think it's info@mates.net.nz. Reach out to us with that desire, and we can come back to you and talk about how we can work together in whatever capacity it is.
You've got lots of examples of where people have done that in the past, haven't you, in different capacities?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't always need to be, say, training or speaking related. It can be a great working relationship, fundraiser, whatever it is. We're always happy to hear what you have to say.
Hilary from Nelson's just asking a question. She's a massive supporter. Thanks, Hilary. She's just asking what's happening within the training organisations. Is there opportunity within there? I guess it's more a question about how do we get this knowledge out there to the right people, particularly if they're young, and is there a relationship you have with the training organisations?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's something we're developing at the moment, moving forward. It's a real key focus area for us. You saw the statistics earlier, shown by Lauren, and especially that age group of 20 to 24 is a focus group for us. That's usually where people are coming into the industry for the first time as apprentices, as cadets. And it's one of the needs that we've actually identified through our research that we're addressing even in our future action plan. So I'd say watch the space. We've got those relationships, and let us cook with in the colloquial team.
Got a new training program in the pipeline that we've gone for funding for. So it's just a waiting game, but absolutely, it's such a key point.
Absolutely. It's a question I've been asked thousands of times over 3 years. Why isn't mates in schools? And I think that's the direction we're heading with them.
Beautiful.
Probably a question back to Chris as well. There's just a question here. I know this has come up in the past. I understand the intent behind the question, but is there a potential to increase the likelihood of suicidal ideation through general awareness training? I know this is something Mates thinks about quite a bit. And just as a context for this, the business the person works for is trying to move away from communicating the negative side of mental health and shifting the focus to promoting positive well-being through models like Te Whare Tapu Whā, which we know is also woven into Mates and obviously a good thing to do. But I think it's more about the first part of it. Any views on that potential of increasing suicidal ideation through general awareness training?
Yeah, it's all about how you do it. It's how you talk about it and when and where you talk about it. Like as Chris introduced me, I'm in the School of Education, so I'm a big fan of educating people about suicide, but there's a way and a method to do that. There is the possibility of general awareness training, particularly if there are people in that training who are vulnerable, who are currently going through stress. But I'm pretty confident Lauren and James can probably talk to this too in terms of, what's in. We're very careful in the Mates program about the content, the imagery, the messaging that is delivered in those general awareness training. It's not somebody rocking up to a community hall and talking about how bad suicide is, what the numbers are, and the fact that the system is broken and there's no help available. which seems to be a key kind of a message for a lot of other awareness raising kind of events. But Lauren, James, do you want to talk into this too?
The hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So literally, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head with no pun intended. Our general awareness training, it's a delicate dance. We're not going in there to be a shock and awe, a sort of approach to wow people with numbers. But Lauren just said to me there, it's about igniting hope, acknowledging the truths that we do have within our state of play, but then also being able to provide tools, tips, strategies on what we can do about it, which is empowering. It's the second part of that water wheel that I discussed earlier, which is building that strength, which comes from igniting that hope. And that's very key to, I know, all of our field officers' delivery, is to always leave every attendee with a sense of purpose and to not simply walk in and shock. It's a fun thing to do, fun thing to deliver. And that's what we aim to make it. Not a stigmatized or a shameful topic, but one that we're proud to deliver and the attendees are proud to be a part of.
A couple of quick questions. I think you can answer them really quickly, Lauren, from Rick. And it's just more about the details in the research. So just whether the balance decreasing the stresses with increasing the positive, that's in the research. Are the positive things you can do articulated in the research? And also within the research, is there a breakdown of the costs that make up costs of suicide that impact the construction industry? Are they found in the detail that people can download?
100%. Some of the reports are over 100 pages, so there is plenty of detail in terms of those positive factors. That's your the protective factors are all in the research, like your good support and communication, and your the soft skills, which is your interpersonal skills, things like that. So absolutely, I just encourage people to go and read the reports, look at the contents page and jump to the bit that really interests you, and the exec summary. We all do it. Go there, see what you think. But absolutely, this was very high level for the time.
Great. So look, I think we'll leave it there. We've run out of time. There are a couple of other questions there which we'll try and get back to an answer. Look, this recording is going to be available on our website, CHASNZ website, probably this time tomorrow, I imagine. And the presentation will be available. As we said, the links back to where the research are will all be there as well. And I just want to thank the participants today and all the attendees. Thanks for sticking with us over your lunch break. Great topic, and have a great week, guys. Thank you.